In February 1943, Germany believed the American army was weak, a force that would break under real pressure. One German field marshal even wrote that Americans would never learn how to fight. 3 weeks later, that belief collapsed forever. Mid-February 1943, near the Tunisian border, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel sat inside his command post, writing a letter to his wife, Lucy. Just days earlier, his forces had smashed American positions at Kasserine Pass. Outside, the Afrika Korps celebrated victory. Inside, Rommel was dissecting what he'd just witnessed. Rommel's letter was brutally honest. He wrote that the Americans were soft, poorly trained, and led by officers whose mistakes would never be tolerated in a European army. At Kasserine, he had watched American units collapse under pressure. In just 6 days, more than 6,000 Americans became casualties. Entire battalions surrendered, and equipment was left scattered across the desert. To Rommel, this defeat felt familiar. It reminded him of the French collapse in 1940. The Americans hadn't simply lost. They had been humiliated. Soldiers raised on stories of World War I heroism were now questioning whether they truly belonged on a modern battlefield. Rommel believed he was watching something far more important than a tactical victory. He thought he was seeing the American fighting spirit break in real time. In his letter, he warned that if Germany attacked again within weeks, the Americans could be pushed into the sea before they ever learned how to fight properly. Rommel's assessment was quickly shared with Berlin. The message was clear and urgent. Exploit American weakness immediately. Do not give them time to adapt. This was not arrogance or prejudice. It was based on what German commanders had just observed on the battlefield. At Kasserine Pass, American forces had failed in multiple critical areas. Units were positioned poorly. Radio discipline collapsed under pressure, and coordination between infantry and armor barely existed. When German forces attacked, American units retreated without orders, triggering panic that spread from unit to unit. The situation was made worse by leadership at the top. The commander of the American Second Corps, Major General Lloyd Frendahl, had placed his headquarters in a canyon nearly 70 miles behind the front lines. He fought the battle through radios and telephone lines, never seeing terrain or the men under fire. His orders were confused, delayed, and often contradictory. German intelligence officers took careful notes. American equipment was adequate. American soldiers fought bravely when cornered, but the command structure was amateur. These were troops learning modern warfare for the first time against the most experienced army in the world. Rommel calculated that it would take the Americans at least 6 months to correct their leadership failures. A full year, he believed, would be needed to develop effective doctrine. If Germany attacked again in March, the outcome would likely mirror Kasserine. German armored doctrine had crushed every opponent since 1939, and there was no reason to believe the Americans would be different. That doctrine was simple and proven. Concentrate overwhelming force at a weak point. Break through with armored spearheads. Exploit the breach with speed and mobility. Force the enemy to retreat or be encircled and destroyed. It had shattered France in 6 weeks. It had devastated Soviet armies in 1941, and it had driven British forces across North Africa twice. Most armies fought defensively, trying to hold fixed lines. German mobility simply went around them. At Kasserine, the Americans had done the same. They dug in, waited to be attacked, and retreated when pressure mounted. Rommel now studied the terrain around El Guettar in central Tunisia. It was ideal for another decisive blow. If German forces attacked in late March, they would catch the Americans still recovering from humiliation. Berlin agreed. One more offensive would break American morale completely. After that, Germany could turn its full attention to the British, while Americans shipped their defeated army home. They had no idea how much could change in just 3 weeks. In early March, German intelligence reported a sudden command change. On March 6, 1943, Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr. assumed command of the American Second Corps, the same force that had collapsed at Kasserine Pass. To German planners, this changed little. One general could not fix systemic failure in 3 weeks. But the moment Patton arrived, the atmosphere shifted. He entered headquarters with siren-blaring motorcade, wearing his ivory-handled revolvers like a warning. Before issuing a single order, he made his message clear. The era of the soft American was over. Patton enforced discipline with ruthless speed. Soldiers were ordered to wear proper uniforms and regulation helmets, even in desert heat. Officers who arrived unprepared were fined on the spot. Salutes were mandatory. This wasn't vanity. Patton understood something Rommel underestimated. Discipline changes psychology before it changes tactics. German analysts dismissed the changes. Morale might improve slightly, they thought, but doctrine could not be rewritten in weeks. Training an army took time. Rommel, despite worsening health, reviewed the Guettar offensive plan one last time before handing operational command to General Hans-Jürgen von Arnim. Every assumption in the plan was logical. The Americans would defend fixed positions. They would hesitate under pressure. 3 weeks would not be enough to transform an army. German experience supported every conclusion. On March 22, 1943, German forces prepared to attack American positions near Guettar. The 10th Panzer Division and the veteran Italian Centaur Division were assembled for the assault. Commanders briefed their units on expected American behavior: static defense, delayed air support, and eventual retreat. Technically, the Germans still held the advantage. Their 75mm guns could penetrate Sherman armor at over 2,000 yards. American tanks needed to close dangerously close to return fire. In open desert terrain, German firepower should have been decisive. Artillery plans were finalized. The operation was designed to repeat Kasserine, step by step. The Germans expected another collapse. March 23, 1943. Dawn broke over Guettar. German forces advanced confidently, certain they were about to witness the same American failure. What they didn't realize was that 3 weeks had been enough to change everything that truly mattered. The German attack began at 6 a.m. Lead elements of the 10th Panzer Division rolled forward under clear skies. Visibility was excellent. The terrain favored armor. Everything matched the German plan, until the Americans opened fire. This was not scattered artillery or ranging shots. It was coordinated time-on-target fire. Multiple American batteries landed their shells on German positions at the exact same second. The accuracy was shocking. The volume was devastating. German tanks took direct hits. Infantry units called urgently for medical evacuation. This level of artillery coordination was something German forces, still dependent on horse-drawn guns, could not match. The Americans weren't suppressed. They were executing fire missions with professional precision. The 10th Panzer Division pushed forward anyway. German commanders expected resistance to crumble under pressure. Instead, American tank destroyers opened fire from concealed positions. German Mark IVs began taking flank shots. The Americans weren't defending from obvious positions. Anti-tank guns had been placed to create overlapping crossfires. No matter which way German armor turned, it was exposed. This was not improvisation. It was doctrine. By 9 a.m., German forces had advanced nearly 2,000 yards. Under normal circumstances, this would have triggered an American retreat. But this time, the Americans didn't run. They conducted fighting withdrawals to prepared secondary positions, then resumed the fight. For the soldiers of the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One, Guettar wasn't just another battle. It was an exorcism. These were the same men humiliated at Kasserine Pass. Now, as German armor approached, they didn't look for an escape route. They looked down their sights. German radio intercepts told the story. American communications were calm and professional. Officers issued clear tactical orders. Units reported positions and coordinated fields of fire. This wasn't the chaos of Kasserine. American infantry held their ground under fire until ordered to withdraw. When they moved deliberately. Unit cohesion was preserved. German advances became costly, yard by yard. Subscribe for real World War II stories they don't teach in textbooks. On the German right flank, the Italian Centaur Division ran into unexpected resistance. American machine guns opened from overlapping positions. Infantry attacks stalled under precise counterfire. The battlefield had been prepared. By noon, the German advance had stalled at just over 3,000 yards. This was not the breakthrough Rommel's doctrine promised. This was something far more dangerous. The Americans were no longer breaking. At his headquarters, General Hans-Jürgen von Arnim studied the reports coming in from Guettar. The attack was not achieving its objectives. Casualties were rising, but the Americans were not collapsing. This didn't match the intelligence assessment built after Kasserine Pass. Something fundamental had changed. The terrain was familiar. American tanks were still technically inferior. Yet the Americans were fighting with coordination and aggression German commanders had not anticipated. Radio intercepts confirmed it. American officers were issuing confident, precise orders under fire. Artillery was concentrating with devastating accuracy. Infantry units were counterattacking instead of retreating. What had once looked like a routine breakthrough was turning into a grinding, expensive fight. By the evening of March 23rd, German momentum had stalled. On March 24th, von Arnim recommended suspending the offensive. The cost was too high. No decisive breakthrough was possible. German forces withdrew, leaving behind a battlefield that told a disturbing story. German intelligence immediately began searching for answers. Captured American soldiers were questioned. Documents were examined. They expected to find new equipment or major reinforcements. They found none. The Americans had not received better tanks. They had not trained for months. They had not been reinforced in large numbers. The transformation had occurred in just 21 days. Patton's method was simple and ruthless. First, leadership. Officers who hesitated were removed. Officers who attacked were promoted. Command positions were given to men who understood that speed and aggression won battles. Second, doctrine. Units were taught to counterattack immediately when engaged. Artillery was trained to concentrate overwhelming fire at decisive points. Defense no longer meant waiting. It meant constant pressure on the enemy. Third, psychology. Patton didn't inspire through speeches. He transformed behavior through action. Success was rewarded publicly. Failure was punished immediately. The lesson was clear to every soldier. Attack succeeds, hesitation fails. Guettar forced German commanders to confront an uncomfortable truth. The Americans had learned faster than any opponent Germany had faced. They had identified their weaknesses and corrected them almost immediately. The army that broke at Kasserine Pass no longer existed. Rommel had already begun to revise his assessments before leaving Tunisia. His health was failing, but his judgment remained sharp. The tone of his reports had changed. He warned that American forces under new leadership were improving at a speed Germany had never encountered before. On March 6, 1943, two critical events happened at the same time. In Tunisia, Rommel launched his final offensive against the British Eighth Army at Medellin. It collapsed in a single day under coordinated Allied anti-tank fire. That same day, George S. Patton assumed command of the American Second Corps. 3 days later, Rommel flew to Germany on sick leave. He would never return to North Africa. Before leaving, he issued a final warning to German commanders. Do not assume the Americans will break like they did at Kasserine Pass. The warning came too late. On May 13, 1943, Axis forces in Tunisia surrendered. More than 250,000 German and Italian soldiers went into captivity. In less than 3 months, the Americans had gone from humiliation to total victory. German commanders studied what had happened. They issued new tactical guidance. American forces were no longer to be underestimated. They warned that U.S. units combined aggressive maneuver with devastating artillery coordination and overwhelming logistics. Those warnings proved accurate in Sicily. When Allied forces landed in July 1943, Patton's 7th Army advanced rapidly up the western coast. German defenders reported that American speed and aggression made organized defense nearly impossible. By June 1944, Rommel faced the Americans again, this time in France. His defensive plans were built specifically to counter aggressive American doctrine. He positioned mobile reserves close to the beaches, knowing the Americans would push inland immediately. Rommel's opinion had completely reversed. He now wrote that American forces were tactically more advanced than the British. They combined material superiority with aggressive doctrine that punished hesitation. On D-Day, Rommel's preparations were undermined by Hitler's refusal to release panzer reserves. But Rommel's assessment proved correct. Despite heavy casualties, American forces pushed inland aggressively at Utah and Omaha beaches. After the war, German generals were interrogated. Their testimony was remarkably consistent. They admitted that Americans learned faster than any army Germany had faced. Weaknesses were identified and corrected in weeks, not months or years. They agreed on one thing. The transformation was not about better equipment. Other armies had good tanks. Others had experienced soldiers. But only the Americans combined material power with doctrine that made those advantages decisive. The same army that collapsed at Kasserine Pass became one of the most effective fighting forces in history. The Germans didn't just lose the war. They lost their belief in their own superiority. The 90 days between defeat and victory changed the course of the century. Leadership mattered more than experience. Doctrine mattered more than equipment. Aggression mattered more than technical perfection. When American doctrine met German engineering at Guettar, doctrine won. It won in Sicily. It won in Normandy. And it carried the Allies all the way into Germany. That was the moment the arsenal of democracy found its sword. The Germans thought Americans needed years to improve. They were wrong by almost a full year. If this story changed how you see World War II, like the video and subscribe for real war history. And comment below, what do you think mattered more, leadership or doctrine?